So the next part of critical path analysis is critical activities. We're going to talk about that in this video. Don't worry if the last video is quite quick and felt a bit rushed. We're going to go through all that stuff again. This just introduces another kind of layer on top of it. So when we work through these questions from the start, we'll be doing all those early and late event times as well. So there's some notes that accompany this. A critical activity is one where if you increase its duration or delay its kind of start time, then that means that the overall project will definitely be delayed. Some activities you can change, you can delay them slightly, and it won't affect the overall time, but a critical activity is one where any delay or any increase in its duration will definitely delay the project. And these critical activities form critical paths, and the critical path is just a path from the start to the end where every activity on that path is critical. That's what we call a critical path. It all kind of makes sense. The best way to do this is just to practice, as always. So let's have a little look. So here, this question 1, we've already got our early and late event times. So let's identify critical activity. So if you look at A, before and after A, we have the same early event time and late finish time here and here, and here and here. And this is often a massive indicator of a critical activity. So we're just going to list our critical activities. So A is 1. If we delay A at all, if we delay A and start A at 1, say, then it's going to go to 7, and that's going to have a knock-on effect everywhere. C, however, if you look at C, because C, at the end of C, we've got 14, 15. So C can start at 14, but also the 15 means if it finishes there, it still won't delay the project. So C is not critical. We're looking for things like this, where D is critical, because this is 7, this is 7, the duration is 7. This makes it a critical activity. B is not, the 3 and the 10, so there's no need to worry about that one. Again, if B can finish, the whole point of this 10 is that it means B can finish at 10, so you could start it on day 7 if you wanted to. It would finish at 10 and you could still complete the rest of the project in time. E is the same, there's nothing fancy going on there, no match up here or here, so E won't be critical. That's A, B, C, D, E, F, not critical. These numbers don't match up. G will be critical because it's 9. These numbers are the same. These numbers are the same. And the 9 is the difference between here. So G will be critical. H will not be critical. As soon as you see this, 7 and 14, even though 22 and 22 are the same, this means H is not critical. I also not critical. We don't have the same numbers top and bottom in the square, so I is not critical. J also not critical. The 19 and 20 means you could start J at 20 and it would still, you still have a bit of time. So J is not critical. K not critical. These numbers are different, but L is critical because the numbers here are the same, the numbers here are the same, and that duration of 7 all kind of matches up, and therefore it is critical. If you delayed L, you'd have to delay everything. So they're my critical activities, and from this I can actually identify a critical path here as well. It doesn't ask us to do this, but our critical path here, if we go from A, D, G, L, we follow critical activities all the way along. So there's one critical path here, A, D, G, L. Simple as that. Hopefully simple anyway. So look at 2. So part of an activity network is shown below, which are the critical activities. So sometimes you have to be very careful because this here and this here, they look like, well, this spells out critical activity because the numbers are the same top and bottom at the end of the activity. However, F is only 8, and if you add 8 on to 7, hopefully you'll get 15, and that means the next activity is 18. So it can start at 18. So I've actually got a bit of leeway. We've got a leeway of 3 here. So even if I delayed F by a little bit, or increased F by another 2, say, and it was 10, so let's say F was 10 instead, just for argument's sake, then we'd have 17. It would still be fine because we're still well within reach here. If you made F 14 or something, then obviously it's gonna change things. But it's just occasionally we get an activity which looks like it might be critical, but isn't actually critical. So our critical activities here, not F, but we have got E, because again we've got the whole numbers match up, and that difference between 7 and 12 is the duration of the activity. So E is critical. And also here we've got two numbers the same, and that difference between them is the duration of the activity. So G is critical. So EG would kind of be part of a critical path potentially here. But this is just a highlight, just be careful, because it's not always, don't assume it is. Yes, look out for the numbers being the same, but also check that the duration of the activity is the difference between the numbers in the boxes. Very quick example, that one. Number 3. Critical paths in this one, and critical activities. So same kind of idea. So let's do our activities first, so we know which ones are critical, and then we'll look at where the paths are. So A, critical, 0, 0, 4, 4, and the duration is 4, so A is definitely critical. Just go alphabetical. B, same numbers, difference is 5, so B is critical. C, not critical, 7, 8 here, so that won't be critical. D, same numbers, duration is 3, so this will be critical, so we can write that one in. E, where's E here? E, not critical, 7 or 8 here, so we can, E could start at 7, be done by 8, or it could start at 8 if you wanted to and be done by 9, so it's still not affect, although this is the same. Both have to be the same. So E is not critical. F, again, also not critical. These numbers don't match up on the left. So F is not critical. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Critical, same values here, difference of 2. So G is critical, and H is also critical, because the numbers all match up. Okay, the dummy here doesn't count for anything. There's no activity there, so we don't even need to consider dummies. We do need to consider dummies when we're doing the early event times and late finish times. They probably won't have any effect. In fact, they won't, but always worth considering. Just in case, just to make sure. So there are activities. Now to find the critical paths, there might be more than one. All we do is we look along some of these activities from start to finish and see if there's a path which contains entirely critical activity. So for example here we have A, definitely, B is critical, D is critical, G is critical, so that's going to be one of them. A, B, D, G. We've got A, B, dummy doesn't count, H, that's going to be critical. Any delay in any of those activities will delay the whole thing. And then we're going to have, that's it, isn't it? Because A, C cannot be critical, therefore there's no roots that way. So just A, B, D, G and A, B, H. That's that question done. And the last one is just a full question. So activity network is shown below. It's in days. Copy and complete the network. Show the early and late event times. I've given you the copied version, so you can just write in there. Explain why G is not critical, and then determine the critical activities and the length of the critical path. So this is kind of more like we get onto like a slightly more fuller question, or a slightly fuller question. So let's have a look at this in detail. So early and late event time. So we start with 0, 0. So we're adding 0 and the duration, so the start time and the duration. So 0 and 3 is 3. There's only one activity before this box, so that must be correct. Same here, B. There's only one activity, so 0 plus 7, that must be 7. Again, this box, there's only one activity before it, C. So 3 plus 4 is 7. This box, a little bit more complicated because we've got two activities before it, this one and this one. So you need to consider both of them. So 3 plus 2 is 5, 7 plus 3 is 10, so you pick the bigger one. So this will be 10. Again, even if I'd done A and done D, there's no way I can start F There's no way I can start from this box until B and E are both done. It requires both of them, and that's going to take longer than A and then D. Let's go for the bigger number. We can consider this one now. We've got 3 things going in. We've got the dummy going in. So that's 7 plus 0, 7. 10 plus 4, 14. And then 7 plus 1 is 8. Pick the biggest one, which is 14. And then finally the last box for the early event times. 14 plus 3 along the bottom is 17. 7 plus 5 is 12. Take the bigger one, which is 17. Okay. Fill in the 17 underneath, that's always going to match up. And then we work backwards to do the late finish times. So backwards, this one's fine, it's only got 1 after it. 17 minus 3 is 14. This one's got 2 things after it, the dummy and H. So we need to consider both of them. 14 minus 0 for the dummy will be 14. 17 minus 5 for H. Remember, it's the bottom number to do. 17 minus 5 is 12. It's a late finish time, but we pick the smaller one, so this is 12. Can't consider this box yet because we've got 2 to consider. We don't have the number here yet. So let's have a look at this one. Only 1 activity after it. So 14 minus 4 minus the F gives us 10. This one has got 2 activities after it, so we need to consider both. 10 minus 3 is 7. 14 minus 1 is 13. Pick the smaller one. Oops. A glimpse of online shopping there by the looks of things. And then we've got this box to consider. So it's got 2 coming out of it, C and D. 12 minus 4 is not 16. 12 minus 4 is 8. 10 minus 2 is also 8, so it's going to be 8. Pick the smaller one if we get a choice. And then this one should always be 0. 8 minus 3 is 5. 7 minus 0 is 0. Minus 7 minus 7 is 0. So 0 is the smaller one, pick that. And there's all our early and late event times done. And remember, whenever you're doing with the early start times, it's always you're always adding the top. It's always the top numbers. Don't even consider the bottom yet. And when you're doing the late finish, you're always considering the bottom. So don't worry about the top numbers when you're doing the late finish ones. Okay, then we've got explain why G is not a critical activity. So this is part A here, part B. So G is not a critical activity because the 7 plus the 1, i.e. 7 plus 1 equals 8. Or you could say 7 plus 1 does not equal 14. Okay, and what we can actually do here is say G has what we call a float of, and you can do the late finish time minus the activity and the event start time, so minus 7 minus 1. Which gives us 6 overall. So G can actually be moved around by 6 here. You can probably see that. Because it starts at 7, needs to be done by 14, and it takes 1. So if you start, you've got a delay of 6. So if you delayed it by 6, then that would make it critical. Any more than 6, and obviously it's going to change things. It's going to delay everything. But anything that's got a float of 0 is critical. Anything with a float of something bigger than 0 is not critical. And we're going to come on to float fully in the next part. That's just a little brief introduction. And determine the critical activities and the length of the critical path. So critical activities, A, not critical because we don't have anything matching here. We just go through the whole network. We should notice that B is critical. A is not, C is not, D is not, E is critical, F is critical, G is not. So this is an example of G where it looks like it might be, but we know it's not because we've explained it. H is not critical and I is critical. So there are critical activities, and then our path that is critical. Remember, there can be more than one, but here it's just BFI and its length is 17 days.